Rejected for bringing her child, this single mom's life-changing journey to an amazing CEO REVEA, Sarah clutched her purse tightly as she stood outside the corporate building, the wind of Chicago biting at her cheeks. She was dressed in her best, a second-hand blazer that hung a little loosely on her frame. Lily, her bright-eyed 6-year-old, skipped beside her, oblivious to the tension. Their journey was a blend of hope stacked on the back of each other's courage. Today was just another set of doors waiting to be opened or slammed shut. As they entered the lobby, Sarah felt the cool stares of polished professionals. Rejection lingered in the air like stale coffee. Gary, the receptionist, didn't even bother to hide his disdain when he noticed Lily. "This isn't a daycare," he snapped, his tone cutting like a knife. The weight of his words crushed Sarah's spirit. But she smiled down at Lily, who was busy imagining a rainbow at her feet. "Mommy's going to talk about jobs," she chirped, swinging her crayon-filled backpack, her innocence a bright spark in a dull room. Driven by a mix of anxiety and determination, Sarah murmured reassuring promises to herself. "You've got this. Keep going for her." But as she was escorted out with a wave of dismissive gestures, her heart sank further. Days morphed into interviews filled with the same icy reception, each rejection weaving another thread of despair into Sarah's dreams. Yet, in the evenings, her small apartment became a haven. Neighbors gathered, laughter weaving together their struggles into a comforting blanket of solidarity. Cooking a simple spaghetti dinner, Sarah found solace in sharing stories, easing the burdens of single parenting through Connection Point one evening, as her friends gathered around the table. Their warm smiles stirred something deep within her. "Why don't we create a space for us?" Sarah wondered aloud. "Where we can support each other." The idea ignited laughter and hope. Sarah's heart raced. This is it. This could be her purpose. That in a twist of fate, during one of her interviews, Sarah's passion shone through as she spoke, captivating Mark, the successful CEO who had dropped in for a coffee. His attention felt like a lifeline. "You see things differently," he said earnestly. "It's refreshing." Sarah beamed. But her excitement soon teetered on the edge of disaster as a corporate scandal threatened to unravel everything Mark stood for, and with it, her newfound purpose. The whispers crowded her mind. Was Mark a part of the problem? "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. The tension of each passing day rolled like thunder in Sarah's mind. In a pivotal moment, she confronted Mark after a community gathering, his expression one of quiet turmoil. "Do you believe in a family-first approach?" she pressed, conviction filling her voice. They stood on the brink, their spirits intertwining in this moment of truth. Would they dare reject society's expectations? Could they create change together amidst the looming shadows? The community buzzed with uncertainty, holding its collective breath, waiting to see if a single mom could rise against the odds. As whispers filled the air, Sarah felt her heart beat in rhythm with the vibrant community, hoping, dreaming, fighting for a future that felt just out of reach. The question lingered: would the world embrace the vision of family-first policies, or would they succumb to the very darkness they wished to change? Sarah didn't sleep well that night. The weight of her conversation with Mark hung in the air like thick fog. She tossed and turned, doubt clawing at the edges of her mind. What if he wasn't the man she thought he was? Her heart wanted to trust him, but the shadows of corporate intrigue wrapped around her like a shroud. Morning dawned, and with it came the low hum of her apartment's familiar chaos. Lily's laughter broke through, a melody so pure and innocent that it surfaced Sarah's resolve. As they sat together at their tiny kitchen table, munching on cereal, Lily leaned in closer, her bright eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Mommy, are you going to make new friends at that place with the big doors?" Sarah smiled, ruffling Lily's hair. Maybe, she replied, her heart warming at the thought. But it's not just about making friends. It's about helping people like us. The moment felt significant, like the quiet before a storm. It was a reminder to Sarah that behind every decision she made, every risk she took, was her daughter. Inspired, she grabbed her laptop, a relic from better days, and started typing. She poured her thoughts and fears into a blog post about family-first policies and why they mattered. The words spilled out like water rushing from a dam, and as she typed, her vision sharpened. She could redefine the image of working moms not as burdens, but as pillars of strength in the workforce. When she hit publish, a sense of empowerment swept over her, as if she were sending her hopes into the world. Encouraged by the supportive comments flooding in, Sarah decided to present her ideas to Mark. She believed he could be an ally, someone in a position to make changes that would ripple out into the corporate world. Armed with passion and purpose, she crafted an email to him, requesting a meeting to discuss her vision. The next day, anticipation coursed through her veins as she entered the same corporate building again. This time, the lobby felt different, less intimidating. With every step she took, the murmurs of doubt faded away, replaced by a surge of belief. She even managed a brief chat with Gary, who surprised her by offering a simple nod of acknowledgement instead of the usual disdain. Finally, Sarah found herself sitting across from Mark in a conference room filled with natural light. His expression was pensive as she laid out her ideas. Sarah spoke about creating a family-friendly workplace culture that could inspire others, reduce turnover, and ultimately enhance productivity. Each point flowed seamlessly, her nerves dissolving as she shared personal anecdotes. Mark listened intently, leaning in as Sarah spoke with urgency and passion. "We have an opportunity here, Mark," she insisted, locking eyes with him. "If we unite our voices, we could inspire change. What if we created a community within your company that embraces this vision?" For a fleeting moment, hope flickered in Mark's eyes. Just as he opened his mouth to respond, the door swung open, and in stepped a group of executives. Their smirks were filled with concealed judgment. Was this the moment that would determine Sarah's fate? "Mark, you've told us you're working with this single mother." One of them sneered, drawing Sarah's breath tight in her chest. In that instant, Sarah felt every ounce of doubt flood her system again. Would her voice be drowned out by the chorus of skepticism? Did her dream of fostering a family-first culture have a real chance, or was it just another distant fantasy? The energy in the room shifted. All eyes were on her. Would Sarah back down or rise to the challenge? With every breath, she summoned her strength, gearing up to make her stand. The moment she had faced with courage was here. Would she find her voice, or would the scales tip once again away from her vision? The answer hung in the air like the tension of a stretched rope, ready to snap. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, a drumbeat of anxiety and defiance. She was acutely aware of the eyes fixed on her, the weight of their judgment wrapping around her like an uncomfortable cloak. She could feel the heat creeping up her neck, but she wasn't going to let it consume her. "Actually," Sarah began, her voice steadying as she steadied herself, "I am proud to be a single mother. And I believe it gives me a unique perspective on this topic." Mark's gaze flickered between her and the group, a wariness in his expression. She pressed on, drawing in a deep breath to center herself amidst the tension. "Our workplace should reflect the realities of life. Many of us are juggling family and career and want to contribute to an environment that understands and supports that. It's not just about me, it's about every working parent out there." The executives exchanged glances, some eyebrows raised, but there was also a hint of surprise. They clearly hadn't expected her to rise from the shadows of their criticism. She continued with newfound determination. "Research shows that companies that embrace family-first policies see increased productivity and reduced turnover. It's not just good for employees, it's good for business." Mark shifted in his seat, his expression softening as she spoke passionately. "Imagine a workplace where mothers and fathers don't have to hide their realities. Where flexibility isn't a privilege but a standard." The room held its breath, caught in the web of her conviction. One of the executives, a senior woman with a sharp bob and a piercing gaze, leaned back, her arms crossed over her chest. And what makes you think this can work in our company? Change is slow, and we don't have time for idealism. It's not idealism, it's adaptability, Sarah countered, feeling more emboldened. If we're willing to take the first step, we can create a model that others will want to follow. This isn't just about me or a few families, it's about a culture shift that could redefine our industry. A murmur swept through the room, voices hushed as if her plea had tapped into their own unspoken desires for progress. Mark's expression grew serious, and he finally spoke. I want to hear more about this. We can't ignore the shifting landscape of work and family. Sarah, I see the value in what you're saying. A spark of hope ignited within Sarah. Just as she thought she'd captured Mark's interest, one executive interrupted, his tone dripping with sarcasm. So, what's next? Are you going to hand out nap schedules too? Before she could respond, Mark cut him off. That's enough. Sarah's ideas deserve our attention. We use the word diversity constantly but often forget that it applies to family structures as well. He met Sarah's gaze with a warmth that made her chest swell with gratitude. For a moment, Sarah believed that hope wasn't distant, change could actually be on the horizon. But it was bittersweet. Not everyone was convinced, and she could still feel the heavy pulse of distrust in the room. As the meeting wrapped up, she felt drained yet exhilarated. She had stood up for something that truly mattered, but the battle was far from over. Let's regroup next week, Mark suggested, shooting her a reassuring smile. We can flesh out a plan. Sarah nodded, the words refusing to settle quietly. Did he truly mean it, or was it just corporate diplomacy? As she stepped out of the conference room, her heart remained ambivalent. Walking to the elevator felt surreal. The walls that once seemed so imposing now felt softer, but she also knew they were far from giving her total acceptance. Mommy, did you win? Lily's innocent voice rang in her ears as Sarah picked up her daughter from the daycare that afternoon. Let's just say, I fought. And sometimes, that's winning enough. As they laughed on the way home, Sarah's mind raced. This was just the beginning. If she could keep pushing, could it be possible? But what if the executive's skepticism lingered in the shadows, ready to strike again? The challenges ahead loomed large, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of both exhilaration and fear that mixed together like an uncertain tide. Sarah barely slept that night. She tossed and turned, her mind replaying the meeting in loops. Each word she had spoken felt both empowering and frail, like a delicate thread stretched too thin. She thought about Mark, his look of support, and the skepticism that still lingered from others. It gnawed at her, turning over in her gut like a restless child. The next morning, the sun peeked through her curtains with a soft glow, but instead of warmth, it felt like pressure. She poured Lily's favorite cereal and watched her daughter munch contentedly, oblivious to the storm brewing in her mom's heart. Are you okay, Mommy? Lily looked up, her big eyes filled with concern. Just a little nervous about work today. But I'll be fine, Sarah said, forcing a smile. It felt heavy, almost like a weight she was carrying. After dropping Lily off at school, she drove to the office, uncertainty clouding her thoughts. What would the executive say this time? Would they listen to her ideas? Or would they further entrench their beliefs in traditional structures? As she entered the building, her confidence faltered under the flickering fluorescent lights. She made her way to her desk, and the familiar noise of ringing phones and distant conversations filled the air. Today, her ears were tuned to more than just the clatter of keyboards. She could feel the undercurrent of opinions swirling around her. Taking a deep breath, she sat down and quickly pulled up her notes. It was time for her to prepare a more formal proposal. She wanted her ideas to shine through the fog of doubt. She needed to articulate not just a need for change, but a solid, actionable plan. She wanted to show them that being a parent didn't mean compromising productivity, it could enhance it. later in the day, Mark called for a follow-up meeting. Sarah's heart raced as she entered the conference room. This was her chance to present her refined ideas. As she stood before the group, she could see that some were still skeptical, their expressions unreadable. "I appreciate you all making time for this," Sarah began. "After our last meeting, I spent time researching potential family-first policies that could align with our values and drive productivity." She delivered the statistics and examples with clarity and passion. With every chart she presented, she noticed a shift, eyes beginning to focus, bodies leaning in. Mark smiled encouragingly, and even the sharp-bobbed executive seemed less inclined to dismiss her. "You're saying that if we handle flexibility properly, it could not only benefit employees but also lead to a stronger corporate culture?" she challenged. "Yes," Sarah said, encouraged by the moment. "Flexibility can become a foundation. If we embrace schedules that prioritize family, we retain talent and cultivate loyalty. Imagine a world where parents feel supported, and in return, they give their best selves to our projects." But just as she began to feel the tide turning, her heart sank. The same executive raised an eyebrow and leaned forward. "It's a noble goal, but you realize that it takes more than talk. Implementing changes involves real work and commitment from our leadership at every level. Are you ready for the pushback that may come?" Sarah opened her mouth, the words to answer dreading the air. Then she remembered Lily's innocent laughter, her unwavering faith in her mother. "I believe change is possible," she said, her voice steady. "If I can handle the challenges of being a single mother, I can certainly handle some pushback at work. I'm ready to fight for this." The tension in the room was palpable, a thick cloth sitting heavy on their shoulders. Would they see the sincerity in her heart, or would they remain trapped in their rigid views? As she left the room, Mark caught up to her. "You did well, Sarah. I think we might be making strides here." "Thank you, but there's still a long way to go." The walls felt a little less imposing, but doubt still lingered at the edges of her mind. She knew the fight wasn't over. What if she faced backlash? What if they squashed her ideas before they had a chance to breathe? As the day wore on, Sarah wrestled with the tension. The clock ticked loudly, each second a reminder of the unease looming ahead. Just when she thought hope was glimmering, doubt crept back in, whispering its concerns. What did it mean to be brave in this context? And could she truly stand up to a system that had never been designed with her in mind? As she prepared to head home, Sarah felt the pull of her life as a mother and professional woman collide. Her resolve was strong, but the question remained: how far would she go to bridge that gap? Would she find the courage to keep pushing for what she believed? Because the truth was this, in a world that often felt like it pushed her down, she had to ask herself, how high was she willing to climb? The evening was quiet, save for the faint whir of the oven as Sarah prepared dinner. The fragrant notes of garlic sautéed in olive oil filled the kitchen, a comforting reminder of home. But even the smell of her tried-and-true recipe couldn't distract her from the whirlwind of thoughts spinning in her mind. Lily's laughter echoed from the living room, a sound that had once been the lullaby to her long days. Sarah leaned against the countertop, closing her eyes for just a moment. She searched for clarity in the chaos, but all she felt was exhaustion. After the meeting, her pulse still raced. Confidence mixed with fear had become her constant companions. "Mommy, come see." Lily's voice broke through her reverie. Sarah smiled, willing her worries to the back of her mind. She followed her daughter into the living room, where Lily had built an impressive tower out of colored blocks. The bright hues instantly brightened Sarah's spirits. "Wow, look at that. You built a mountain," she exclaimed, crouching down to Lily's level. "It's my special tower. And you have to climb it to see the kingdom." Each block was a new color, a new struggle turned into play. Sarah thought about her own tower, the one made from policies and presentations, all carefully stacked yet precariously balanced. "Maybe we can add more blocks together," Sarah said, picking up a few from the pile. They began to build a fortress, laughter ringing out as they struggled to balance the next piece. Time slipped by, and as they finished, a sense of accomplishment washed over Sarah. She could feel each block representing a small victory in her mind, a team's approval, a policy finally passing, perhaps even starting her climb to the top. But deep down, she couldn't shake the nagging question. What if it all came crashing down? After dinner and bedtime stories, Sarah sat alone in the dim light of the kitchen. The weight of her thoughts felt heavier than the dishes piled in the sink. She knew that the next day would bring a new set of challenges. The executives had promised feedback, and now they were due. What if they rejected her ideas outright? The fear loomed larger than her dreams. A ping from her phone interrupted her. Mark had sent a message. I think the discussion today was just the beginning. Don't lose hope. Remember, change takes time. His words felt like a lifeline. She needed to harness that momentum, channel it into her proposal, and prepare for potential setbacks. Another thought struck her, then a spark igniting. What if she established a small group of like-minded colleagues? Advocates for her ideas who can rally around her and champion the family-first policies? That sense of community might fortify her stance and offer the support she desperately needed. Determined, she reached for a pen and paper. Sarah listed potential allies and resources, her heart racing with the thrill of possibility. She felt her spirit swell steadily, whispering to her that she could do this. She could create a movement, one movement that intertwined work and family, one that valued both sides. As she put the pen down, the plan felt tangible. Often elusive dreams crystallized into reality. But she couldn't ignore the thought thread lurking in the corners of her mind. What if they dismissed her efforts once more? But instead of conceding to defeat, she allowed herself to feel a spark of bravery. It was time to take that first step beyond her own fears and launch this new mission headfirst, because she had everything to gain, and nothing to lose. With renewed energy, she headed off to bed, ready for another early morning filled with endless possibilities. The road would be tough, filled with uncertainty, but one thing for sure: the tower she was building wasn't just made of blocks, it was made of hope. And as she closed her eyes, one question echoed in her mind, leaving her restless and energizing at the same time. How would she convince them that change started at home? Morning light poured through the kitchen window, catching on dishes that were still stacked high from the night before. Sarah inhaled deeply, the scent of fresh coffee curling through the air, battling with her lingering anxiety. Today was the day. Feedback from the executives, and the realization of her plan was just around the corner. Lily's sleepy little face peeked around the corner, her hair a wild mess of curls. "Mommy, can we have pancakes? The big ones?" Sarah smiled and ruffled her hair. "Of course, honey. Big pancakes coming right up." As she measured out the ingredients, her thoughts drifted back to the meeting. What would they say? What if they laughed at her ideas? She tried to shake the worries away, focusing on the mundane joy of cooking for her daughter. Flipping pancakes with one hand while keeping an eye on Lily's antics felt almost superhero-like. She was juggling motherhood and her career, and each day seemed a little more daunting than the last. But as all the pieces came together, she felt something shift in her heart, an unshakable determination. "Help me, Mommy." Lily's voice called out, her tiny hands covered in flour as she tried to scatter it onto the counter. "Okay, little chef." Sarah chuckled, realizing just how much they both needed this time. Cooking with Lily felt like building a bridge between their worlds, one that wove her dreams for the future with the reality of motherhood. Just as they sat down to eat, her phone buzzed again. A notification popped up, an email from Mark, asking if she had solidified her allies yet for the meeting. The urgency in his message triggered adrenaline in her veins. "I'll help." Lily piped up, eyes sparkling. "I can be your ally too." Sarah fought back a laugh. Her daughter's fierce little spirit reminded her of the importance of that very idea, the need for allies, no matter how big or small. "Yes, you can. We're a team." As they finished breakfast, without a second thought, Sarah tucked a small piece of pancake into a bag for later. She thought about how Lily could come to the office one day, bringing her wild energy and her laughter into that serious world. Maybe that was part of the change she wanted to implement, showing that work and family aren't separate entities. They're intertwined. Stepping out of the house, she took a moment to soak in the morning sun, the sky a bright canvas of blues and yellows. It was a sharp contrast to her anxious mind, but somehow refreshing. With each step toward her car, the heaviness in her chest began to lift. Arriving at the office felt different today. There was a buzz of energy in the air, as if the whole building was preparing for something big. She passed her colleagues in the hallway, exchanging their usual greetings, only this time, she filled the small talk with her determination. When she reached the conference room, she took a moment to gather her thoughts. Her hands trembled slightly as she fiddled with the papers that contained her proposal. A soft knock interrupted her focus. "Hey, Sarah." It was Mark, wearing an encouraging smile. "You ready for this?" "Ready as I'll ever be," she replied, forcing a smile. "Remember, they're interested in new ideas, and your passion." Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside. The executives were already seated, the air thick with anticipation. Sarah could feel every heartbeat in her ears as her eyes met theirs, her resolve standing firmer now. This was it. Change began here and now. But as the presentation unfolded, she noticed their expressions shift slightly, some intrigued, some skeptical. "Why should we invest in family-first policies when it could slow our growth?" one executive asked, and a stab of doubt shot through her. The words seemed to echo in the room, and Sarah felt her heart race. This was what she had prepared for. She could feel Lily's laughter in her memory, a reminder that she wasn't just fighting for herself. But could she really convince them that embracing families would empower the workplace? Taking a deep breath, Sarah began to speak, her voice steadying with each word. Just as she was finding her rhythm, another question arose, a question that could change the direction of the entire moment. What happens if it doesn't work? Suddenly, the stakes felt higher than ever. As she opened her mouth to respond, doubts flickered in her mind. Would this be enough? Would they see the vision she held so closely? Before she could answer, she felt a familiar, soft warmth surround her heart. The fight was just beginning, but did she have what it took to turn their skepticism into belief? As she locked gazes with the panel, one final question loomed large: what if she had to face rejection again? Would she crumble, or would she rise? Sarah felt the weight of the room settle on her shoulders. The question hung in the air like an unwelcome guest, and for a moment, time stood still. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, the walls around her closing in. Would her vision be enough to counter their doubts? Taking another deep breath, she grounded herself in her purpose. What if it doesn't work? She echoed, using the time to collect her thoughts. What if we choose to invest in our employees and their families and, in doing so, create a culture that not only attracts talent but retains it? What if, by prioritizing family, we unlock a productivity that we never imagined? A murmur rippled through the room, some heads nodding slightly. It was a small sign, but a sign nonetheless. She pressed on, her voice gaining strength. Current research shows that organizations embracing family-friendly policies see a boost in employee satisfaction and performance. It's as simple as this: when people feel valued in both their personal and professional lives, they go above and beyond. A moment of silence followed. Sarah couldn't decipher the expressions before her. Were they considering her points? Dismissing her ideas? She stole another glance at Mark, who gave her a barely noticeable thumbs up, his own belief steadying her resolve. Then, another executive spoke up, this one with a more empathetic tone. "You're clearly passionate, Sarah. But mentally, we must also consider the practical aspects. What would implementing these changes look like?" "Absolutely, and that's crucial," Sarah answered smoothly, glad to pivot toward specifics. "We can start with flexible working hours or the option to work from home. We could introduce family events in the office, encouraging parents to bring their children for a day in the life experience, fostering a sense of community. By building this bridge, we allow employees to feel more connected to the company, enhancing morale and ultimately our bottom line. There was a flicker of interest that she couldn't ignore, a spark in their eyes that suggested they might be on the tipping edge of considering her ideas. Yet, Sarah felt a sudden twist in her stomach. What if they didn't understand? What if they pegged her as just an emotional mom chasing an impossible dream? As those negative thoughts swirled, she saw the image of Lily again, her bright eyes shining with faith. Her small voice echoed, "I can be your ally too." "Sarah, given your ideas, you seem to have a firm knowledge of your proposal," Mark chimed in, his tone encouraging. "But I sense the risk here. If you don't mind me saying, the chance of failure could be your greatest teacher. But what if the very act of trying changes us, makes us better as a company?" Sarah found herself pleading gently. "I believe it can unite us as a community. We want to foster loyalty and trust, right? It's not just about keeping track of profits but about building genuine relationships." She softened her stance, showing them her human side. The poise and professionalism she'd been showcasing began to dissolve into something more relatable. If failure comes, we learn from it. But sometimes, the benefits of taking that chance far outweigh the risks. Isn't that worth fighting for? The realization hit her like a wave, stronger than the tide. She wasn't just fighting for herself or her daughter, but for everyone who felt torn between work and family. The air felt charged with anticipation. Then, like a dam had broken, the executives began whispering amongst themselves, heated discussions sparking questions and considerations she could only hope would pivot her way. In this moment of uncertainty, hope bubbled up within her. Had she touched on something profound? "Let's take a vote," one of the executives said suddenly, and the room froze, eyes darting to Sarah. "For the sake of innovation, who's in?" But just as they began to raise their hands, another voice interrupted. "Wait, I have a different concern." The voice was authoritative, and every heart in the room sank. Was this the turn of the tide she hadn't seen coming? In that moment, Sarah felt the air thicken again, uncertainty trailing behind her resolve. Had she built it up only to watch it crumble? What lay ahead could redefine everything she'd just worked for. The tension in the room crackled like electricity. Sarah could feel the weight of every gaze upon her, each one a question she wished she could answer. The voice that had interrupted was none other than Elaine, a senior executive notorious for her straightforwardness. Elaine was known for her cold logic and criticism, never shying away from pulling the rug out from under the boldest ideas. "Elaine, please," Sarah said, attempting to maintain her composure. "I haven't even finished. Let's talk realities here," Elaine cut in, steely eyes locking onto Sarah's. "You have a wonderful vision. But we have a company to run. You mentioned bringing in family events. Surely you understand that will come with a cost. Time. Resources. What makes you think our employees are even interested in these events?" The murmurs around her grew into an almost deafening chorus, echoing the unspoken fears of the group. The wall of support Sarah had felt begin to crack, but she couldn't allow herself to falter. "We've seen it time and again," she retorted, her voice rising just enough to reclaim some ground. "People want connection. They crave it. If we invest in their families, they will invest back into us. A thriving workplace culture leads to lower turnover and increased productivity. Families want to feel included, they want their employees to feel valued." But Elaine didn't flinch. "And if it fails? What then?" "It's not about failure," Sarah pressed, heart racing. "It's about learning, growing, and evolving as a company. The truth is, we're facing a talent shortage. By establishing a family-first culture, we shift our workplace dynamic. We're not just optimizing for profits but investing in the people who make our success possible. Let's choose to be courageous." Another executive, Jonathan, shifted in his seat, eyebrows arched. "What about our current policies? You're suggesting abandoning everything to pursue this?" His skepticism seeped through, deeper than the others. Tears prickled at the corners of Sarah's eyes as she acknowledged the growing doubts. The fear of backtracking lingered like a dark cloud, weighing heavily against her resolve. "Maybe it is a gamble," she said, softly sparking curiosity from the crowd. "But isn't that what progress is? Hitting walls and breaking barriers. Look where we are now, everyone's questioning and considering, instead of accepting status quo." A flicker of recognition swept through the room. Some shared glances. Was it possible? Mark cleared his throat, stepping towards the fray. "What Sarah is proposing isn't an abandonment of our policies. It's an adjustment. A strategy to blend our operational priorities with the family values many of us cherish outside of work. We can create a model that thrives on both." But Elaine shook her head, arm crossed. "The job market is ruthless. This kind of shift could weaken us, don't you see?" Then Sarah glimpsed a figure out of the corner of her eye. Lily, sitting in a corner chair, cradling a drawing she had made, a family portrait. The innocence hit like a tidal wave, washing over her fears with sharp clarity. With new determination, Sarah took a deep breath, grounding herself in her purpose again. "If we dare to be different, we might create something revolutionary. This isn't just about policies, it's about our values. It's about what we stand for as a company." And to a little girl who is also watching us, it could mean the world. Silence fell over the room again, but this time, it was pregnant with possibility. "Sometimes," Sarah continued, her heart pounding, "the greatest risk is not following your heart. By following ours, we might just inspire our team to do the same. And that, my friends, could change everything." As the silence stretched, Sarah hoped she had found a doorway into their hearts. Would they be willing to step through it? But just as she dared to hope, Elaine spoke again, sharper than before. "And what if that doorway leads us to a disaster? What will we tell the board when we justify these radical changes?" With her heart in her throat, Sarah braced for whatever came next. Would this be the moment that defined her mission? Or would it push her dreams further away? As she held her breath, she could sense the winds of change beginning to swirl. Was this a moment of hope or a pitfall waiting to happen? The room held its breath. Sarah felt the heat rising in her cheeks as she met Elaine's gaze. The question hung in the air, a challenge blaring like an alarm. It seemed the others, too, were frozen in their thoughts, weighing their loyalty against the fear of innovation. Finally, Jonathan broke the silence. "Isn't there a risk in doing nothing? Look around us. The same policies we're clinging to might be part of what's hurting us. People are searching for workplaces that align with their values." His voice caught on the last word, almost as if he wanted it to linger. Sarah felt a flicker of hope reignite. Exactly. If we keep trying to fit into old molds, we risk becoming obsolete. This is about creating an environment where our team can flourish. Imagine how dynamic our culture could be if we prioritize families. A happy employee is a productive employee, plain and simple. "Let's say we take a bold step," Mark interjected, his brow furrowed in concentration. "How do we implement this without throwing our company into chaos? How do we keep the balance?" A warm wave washed over Sarah as she realized they were starting to engage, to envision together. "We can pilot the program. Start small," she suggested quickly, her heart racing. "Host a family day or offer flexible hours in a trial period. Measure the outcomes. Adjust as needed. This is a living strategy." Elaine's expression flickered, doubt mixing with a trace of interest. "And if your pilot fails, what's our backup plan? The board won't be kind if they see numbers drop." "Then we regroup and learn from it," Sarah shot back, her voice firm now. "We can't be afraid of failure, we have to embrace potential. This is an opportunity to lead, to innovate. Let us show them we are a company willing to evolve, not one afraid to change." Across the table, some of her colleagues exchanged glances, their skepticism wavering slightly. Sarah could feel the tide shifting. Perhaps they could be on the brink of something transformative. Just then, a soft voice broke through the chatter. "I think it's a nice idea." It was Lily, standing up, her small figure framed by the tall chairs. "My mommy always says that family is the best. If you make family days, I could come. I could meet all her friends. It would be fun." Sarah's heart swelled with pride at her daughter's courage. It was a simple statement, yet it hit the room like a soft hammer. Elaine stiffened, her expression softening a fraction. "Well, if families matter," Jonathan began, glancing at Elaine, "maybe we need to rethink how we define success here, too. It should be more than just numbers on paper." Elaine remained quiet, her mind clearly racing. Then, for the first time, Sarah saw a crack in her armor. This had struck a chord. "We can schedule a follow-up," Sarah suggested boldly. "We can draft a proposal, gather feedback from our team. Trust them to help shape this vision." The tension hung thickly, the air charged with uncertainty but also possibility. Sarah could feel the pulse of her dream racing ahead of her, somehow pushing them all to consider a different future. When finally, Elaine spoke again, her voice was steadier. "Fine. But this doesn't mean I'm fully on board." Relief washed over Sarah, bittersweet but real. "That's okay," she replied, a hint of a smile breaking through. "Let us take this step together." But as the meeting began to disperse, an unexpected thought crashed into her mind. Would this moment lead to collaboration, or would she soon find herself under heavier scrutiny worse than before? Sarah's pulse quickened as doubt crept back in. The battle was far from over. What new obstacles would she have to navigate to protect her vision? And would she have the strength to see it through in an environment poised against change? The journey was just beginning, and as the last of her colleagues filtered out, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the real challenge lay ahead. The days that followed were both a whirlwind and a quiet revelation. Sarah's concept started to take root, and the time spent with Mark and a handful of supportive executives felt electric with potential. They took careful steps like planting seeds that would eventually blossom. Meetings were held, discussions buzzing with optimism and trepidation. Sarah shared ideas with her growing circle of colleagues who had rallied around her aim. They crafted surveys to gauge employee perspectives. They brainstormed on how to transform the corporate culture, making it friendlier for families. Suddenly, Sarah felt as if she were not simply an isolated voice, but part of a chorus singing for change. Every small win reignited her spirit, igniting a deeper belief in her mission, but those whispers of skepticism still clung to the shadows, a persistent reminder that not everyone was convinced. In corridors, murmurs echoed caution. "It's risky. It might not pay off," reached Sarah's ears, and each doubt hit harder than the last. But she refused to let fear clip her wings. There was too much at stake. Then, the defining moment loomed on the horizon: the launch of their pilot program. Families were invited for a family day. Excitement crackled in the air like 4th of July fireworks. As it rolled closer, Sarah began to worry. What if things went wrong? What if it flopped? But just then, she would see Lily collecting brightly colored crayons and proudly showing off her drawings to her mom. "This is for Family Day," her daughter exclaimed, splattering Sarah's uncertainty with joy. That simple enthusiasm was a reminder: this wasn't just about policies, it was about people, and about building connections. Finally, the day arrived. Bright balloons floated in the air as laughter and chatter filled the conference hall. Employees brought their children, transforming the usually formal space into a vibrant festival of color and play. It was beautiful. There were games, laughter, and connection. Sarah stood in the center, her heart swelling with pride and love, seeing parents taking time to bond with their kids in a corporate environment that had always felt cold. As the event unfolded, Sarah noticed the changing expressions on her colleagues' faces, some finally softening with realization. She caught a small group of executives sharing a joyful moment over a game of musical chairs alongside employees and their children. It was as if they all suddenly understood the power of family and community. At that moment, tears prickled at the edges of Sarah's eyes, an overwhelming wave of hope crashing over her resolve. But just when the day seemed perfect, one executive stepped forward, his features guarded. "This is charming, but we need to see the data." For a split second, her heart sank. Clara, another colleague who had championed the vision, quickly jumped in, "But are we not seeing the data right here? Look at how engaged everyone is." Mark echoed her sentiment, "This is just the beginning. Let's give the feedback a chance to come through. We'll compile the results." For the first time, there was a united front, a coalition fighting for something bigger than themselves, a transformed culture. As the day slowly wound down, Sarah looked around, her heart full, pulsing in time with the laughter ringing in the air like a lovely melody. Perhaps change might truly be within reach. That night, as they tucked Lily into bed, Sarah leaned in, her heart brimmed with gratitude. "You know, today was really special. You helped me make a difference." Lily beamed, her innocent smile a beacon of hope. Weeks rolled into months, and the pilot program received widespread acclaim, employee satisfaction metrics soared, and even the skeptics had to admit something magical was happening. One morning, Sarah stepped into the office, the familiar hum buzzing like an electric current. As she exchanged smiles with colleagues, she suddenly felt the realization settle deep in her bones. Change was not merely a dream, it was a movement made up of connections, courage, and unwavering belief. In the back of her mind, she knew the journey continued. There would always be challenges ahead, but she had built something profound, a community woven with compassion, understanding, and dedication. They were not just changing workplace policies, they were reshaping lives. As Sarah looked out over the city skyline from her window, the sun casting golden light across her path, she whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." And somewhere, Lily giggled in the background, echoing her mother's persistent dream, and in that moment, Sarah knew they would keep stacking their blocks high, one at a time, building a future where both family and work could thrive harmoniously. You need to subscribe now to join our journey as we continue sharing transformative stories like this. This is the moment to show your support by leaving a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment below with your feelings about Sarah's journey and what it means to you. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible transformation unfold. Together, let us inspire change.